Today on Ask the Oracle, it's all about fortune, freedom, and frugality, unlocking abundance with my dear friend Serina Bird. Ready to break free from financial fear and embrace joyful abundance? We're diving into the world of frugality, freedom, and fulfillment with author and podcaster Serina Bird, whose philosophy proves that saving money isn't about sacrifice, it's actually about empowerment. In this episode, Serina shares how to rewrite your money story, overcome limiting beliefs, and transform financial stress into financial joy. Listen in to discover why women must be great with money, the hidden impact of scarcity mindset, how to shift your money beliefs for financial empowerment, practical tips to feel more positive about your finances. It's time to flip the script on frugality, manifest abundance, and unlock financial freedom. Let's go. Hi, Serina. How are you, my love?
Hello, Suzy. I am so overjoyed to be on your podcast. I was so happy when you asked me.
I'm so happy to have you here. Your message is so unique, so empowering, and so needed out there in the cosmos. So, and yeah, I've read all your books. I love your podcast. We've known each other for a long while now, and you've really inspired my life in so many ways. So I know that you're going to have that same amazing impact on the listeners today. So, yeah.
I hope so. And of course, as you know, I'm a huge fan of your work and I'm currently doing your course at the moment, which has been great. I got a lot, particularly out of the session the other week on visibility.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's so great. I love having you in the group. It's a very collaborative group of amazing women with all sorts of wonderful offerings and yeah, visibility. That's huge. Yeah.
It is. It is. And I think
Mm.
we're often really scared about that. And especially when it comes about to finances, like for so long, we've been so scared to talk about what's really happening.
Yeah, exactly. So, my love, what's your philosophy on joyful frugality?
Oh, that's a big one. Well, it comes from the title of my first book, The Joyful Frugalista. And I'll be honest and say the name didn't come from me. The name came from my publisher for that book, which was Murdoch Books. And I had referred a lot to about frugality and frugal living throughout that book. And they chose the name, and I'm so glad they did because it probably encapsulated who I was better than I realized myself. It's weird like that, how sometimes other people can see you.
Oh, that is so true. Oh, yeah. When I have, like even my beautiful VA, Gillian, when she writes something on my behalf, it's like, oh wow, you do me better than I do me.
Yeah,
So I
exactly. Because
totally
it's
get that.
yeah, other
Yeah.
people often see you in that way. And actually I must say too, just that whole process of pitching a book and having it read and sitting down with the publisher who really got it, it was just like so empowering. And I think for so many years I had been very frugal and I had to be really frugal. And it was almost like a dirty secret. I think now with the cost of living crisis, there's a lot more intention to it, and like younger generations, particularly, um, are quite proud of doing things like thrifting. But back when I wrote the book, it was still considered. It's almost this sense of shame if you were saving money, and I really wanted to, break through that. So frugalista, I didn't invent the term, but it hadn't been very well used in Australia, to be honest, up until that point. It was better understood, at least for a while, in the US, where they were really hit hard by the global financial crisis. And I don't think they've ever really fully recovered. Like there's segments that have, but there's some people who really haven't. And so there's a
Yeah.
lot more movement in terms of saving money and being frugal in the US than there is in Australia. But it is changing and it's changing very rapidly. And joyful really was this whole philosophy that I had that it doesn't have to be a sense of deprivation. And to be honest, when I first sat down to write the book, the first chapter sounded like doom and gloom. And I think it's because I thought that that's what someone saving money should be writing about
Oh,
how,
interesting.
I was not really happy, but I was still saving all this money. And then I stopped and I went, this isn't my life. At the time, when I didn't have my kids, when they were with their dad, because I'd only recently separated, I was often out doing stuff. Like I was doing food reviews. I had a job that got me invited to a lot of openings of a lot of events. I was doing a lot of Instagramming, a lot of blogging, and always wearing op shop clothes,
I love
as
that.
I am today.
Yes.
And so no one would have had any idea that I was saving money because I didn't talk about it. I just did the whole fake it till you make it. Let's enjoy life, projecting a sense of affluence, even though I was having to be really frugal to deal with some life changes.
I love that, and turning the doom and gloom into living joyfully. And I've kind of, witnessed some of your journey, and I know that you actually walk your talk. And yeah, I love that you kind of like projected that kind of beautiful abundance and joy, at the same time, doing what you had to do at the time, which is save. But I think it's a really beautiful way to live. And you're quite right. I think the younger generation are so good at it. It's actually yeah, it's environmentally friendly. It's you're saving money. It's, the best things in life do come for free, I believe, and yeah, so good. I love it. Love it. So how do mindset and money intersect, do you reckon?
Look, they are really, really linked. And money is such a vulnerable topic for so many people. A lot of it has to do with our childhood. And I'm sure you can relate to this because everyone can. We
Yeah.
picked up these things from our family without perhaps realizing it. In a lot of families, it's things like, money doesn't grow on trees or we can't afford that. There's not enough, those kind of things that get said. My childhood was a little bit different because I actually grew up around a lot of abject wealth. So we always had really big houses, like crazy big houses. And I know that sounds very confronting to say, but it was a reality. But my mother would scrimp and save to afford those things like the big houses. And a lot of the sort of dining room conversation was, you can't afford to eat that because you're not earning money like we are, or, this one's only for us because you're not earning money, or they'd spend a lot of money on themselves, but they wouldn't necessarily give money to me. So I was like a poor student who didn't have a lot of money, but living in these crazy big
Interesting.
houses. So it was
Yeah.
really created a lot of scarcity mindset in me that I've really had to work to overcome, this sense that I am actually able to enjoy these things and that I'm worthy of that. So a lot of people have all these sort of emotions about money and they don't even realize they have them. But like for instance, if your parents were always arguing over money, it makes sense that even looking at something like a bank statement or paying your bills on time or developing a system to pay your bills might be really, really triggering for you, or having a partner who said, "Let's sit down and talk about money." Like, you'd probably do anything to avoid that. And a lot of people,
I know I do.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Happy to talk about sex or other things, not talking about money. So there's a lot of really complex things that are going on. And, in terms of the spiritual aspects of that as well, um, there's just so much that's interwoven there. So there's a lot, particularly in Western societies, there's this
Mm,
preconceived ideas that having money is somehow bad, that it's sort of shameful. Like being in poverty
yes.
is shameful, being the Povo family is a deep
Yeah.
sense of shame. But having too much money and being seen that you're flaunting it is also a sense of shame. It's really weird.
What an interesting contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah, that mindset stuff around childhood is so ingrained. I've done a lot of work on that myself. Like my father ran his own business. He was a plasterer and he, one week we had loads of money. The next week we'd be living on, fried eggs and chips, right? And I remember my mother was his secretary, and on a Friday night, it was her job to get on the phone and chase money, with
Oh,
the
ouch.
builders or with the builders, we need the money, So I grew up hearing that too. And I'm a bit like you, like both of my parents actually came, especially my father, he came from affluence. But when he came out to Australia, he was pretty much on his own. So he had to make his own way. Um, So yeah, so I think once you understand, that those kind of limiting beliefs and, conditioning from childhood can really impact on your own wealth mindset. Yeah, it's so empowering just to know it and then to
Yeah.
reframe it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just recognizing it and just recognizing that's where you've got it from and working through it. I mean, this is an example and it's not a money example, but like I've always been a very hesitant driver. So, not really happy driving, particularly long distances, particularly at night. I didn't get my license till I was 31. And I had a lot of resistance to doing that. And actually, the first time I went for a driving lesson, the driving instructor, because I was by that stage a mature aged driver, thought I'd actually had my driving license before. And so she made me drive to work in the fog on a cold Canberra morning. I was like shaking the whole way. She didn't realize I'd never actually driven before. Anyway, we got there. But the point was that's because my mother is a very nervous driver. She hasn't driven, I don't think, for about 10, 15 years. And now that I think about it, growing up, she was very, very nervous about driving. There was a lot of negative things she used to say about danger in cars and driving. My grandmother was also a very nervous driver. She hardly drove at all. When my grandfather died, she never drove. And so it's all these sort of intergenerational things that you're picking up. And I didn't realize that I was picking this up until quite late. And then I went, oh, okay, so now I make sure that I drive as much as possible. I still find it stressful, but it's just I recognize where I've got that from and then try and overcome it.
Wonderful. What's the biggest financial belief that holds people back?
Hmm. There's a lot of this, but I think a lot of it is actually fear of investing. And it's an interesting thing because we're so scared to lose money from investing, but we're quite happy to spend money on other things. It's a
Ah,
weird
that's
sort of
so
thing.
true.
Yeah,
Like big investments can be terrifying, but the
yeah.
only way to get ahead is to, take that leap. Yeah.
Yeah. So many years ago, I got together with a group of people and we formed a share investing club. They were sort of really big about 20 years ago, less so now. Um, but it's just a good way to have money conversations with other people. And we had it so that I think the monthly contribution was around at that time about $40. So for us, it was equivalent to going out for a meal with friends once a month, which a lot of people readily do. We took out my in-laws for dinner last night, and we would have spent many, many times more than that. So the idea was you'd rotate, you go to different people's house every time, you'd bring a plate or something. So it was like going out for dinner, but you'd invest. But the amount of people who dropped out very early on because they freaked out about this, like we might lose money. We might lose money. It was a big thing, and it was really fascinating. Yet at the same time, people in that group of friends were paying to go on, say, overseas vacations, European vacations, buying a new car. Like they didn't worry and think, oh my God, I might lose that money going
Do
on
you
an
think it was
overseas trip.
the sharing aspect? Like some
Yeah,
people have a fear around sharing as well. Like, that kind
yeah.
of retaining or, like, I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
I hadn't thought of that, but that makes sense. Like I've always been fairly big on sharing. I'm
Yeah,
also
me too.
big on sharing groups and such as the Buy Nothing group and other things. And actually, back in 2020, I had a challenge where I challenged myself to give away 366 items. It was a leap year that year. In the end, I gave away a
Yeah.
thousand items. I would have given away more, but because of the COVID shutdown, it actually was very difficult to actually have contact with people. So some of the things like Buy Nothing actually had to shut down for a little while, or at least operate in a reduced way. But the why I'm mentioning this was the weird thing was that I did this to declutter, but the more I gave away, the more I actually gave back because I'd like give someone one book and they go, "Oh, you really love that book so much. I've given you two books." So it was this weird thing. The more you give, sometimes you do actually receive, and that was certainly my experience then. And it's weird that people get so scared about that sharing aspect, and also so scared to invest.
Yes, yes, I know. I've always been a little bit fearless that way. I'm not quite sure why. Um, but it does pay off. And yeah, the whole investing, um, You know what it is too? It's like, you're quite right. Like, you can waste a whole heap of money on lots of little things or even big things. But when it comes to actually investing in money, maybe it's because it's not instantaneous. I'm not sure. Like there's
Yeah.
a, it's a long-term investment, isn't it? Do you think?
It is a long-term investment, but I think now there's a lot more apps that make it a lot more fun, like that they use gamification, particularly micro investing apps. So I have investments through a platform called Perla for my kids and for me. I have others for shares, but like specifically for micro investing, when I sell things, I declutter things, I put money into there. And it's kind of fun because the interface is really easy and you can use it on your mobile phone. There's others. There's one called uh, Raise, RAIZ, which is very popular,
Oh,
and some
that's so
people really like
useful.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's really useful, and you can see those things. But yeah, it doesn't always give you the same dopamine hit as buying something online and seeing the package arrive, or going to a shop and trying something on with that tactile sense. Um, yeah, so that is an issue. It is a longer term thing, and things are locked away as well, so you're not having as access to it as readily.
Yeah, yeah. So, how can someone shift from that kind of lack mentality, scarcity, victimhood to more abundance kind of thinking, What's the shift? What do you think is the catalyst, the kind of the turning point in regards to that kind of amazing shift that can happen?
Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? Because so much of it is, as Louise Hay used to say, I'm the only thinker in my mind. It's a mental game, yeah. And a lot of it comes down to feeling that you're worthy of it. But I think a really
Yes.
good place to start actually is the gratitude piece. So, we talk, about ask and receive and gratitude. I see it as a circle. So, like, the more you're grateful for, the more you feel comfortable about asking, and then more you'll feel worthy about receiving, and then you feel grateful for it, and it's sort of cycle goes around. So, I think that gratitude piece is really important. Feeling really grateful for what's around you, because it can feel sometimes like it's very competitive, and you can get a bit sort of like, oh my god, that person's got a bigger house or a bigger car. I mean, I work in the public service, and I know at some point in time you have two, and it can be very much, well, that person's an APS 6 and that person's an EL 1 and that person's an SES band 1 or a band 2, and why am I not this and they're earning this, and it can be very
Yes.
draining. And I think you just
Yeah.
have to stop all that and go, I'm really grateful for where I am now. Bring it into the present. What can I do in the now to improve my future? So when I was going through tough times, I used to say to myself, one day at a time, one thing at a time. So bring yourself into the gratitude of the now. And what are the things that I can do now to improve my finances in the future? Now, if you do one thing every day, it'll improve over time. So when I was going through divorce after domestic violence, I was really scared, and I found it hard to even look at my bank accounts or read the financial review or other financial press or do things that I had done before that. But I just sort of went, look, today I am just doing an online MyGov thing. It might just be
Just that,
applying for
that
child
that
support.
step,
Yeah,
that baby step
yeah,
towards,
exactly.
abundance. Yeah.
Or I'm learning about this,
Yeah.
or I'm setting up this, or I'm changing to, a better mortgage, that'll give me a
Yeah.
better rate. It's a whole series of things that you do. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does start with a sense that, yes, I'm worthy of this, and yes, I can do this. I'm a big believer too in setting goals. Like sometimes
Yes.
almost I like to set like a achievable goal, and then I like to set a stretch goal. So I've learned to do the two. I'm not a huge fan of SMART goals. They have their place, but it just feels a bit like, I don't know, it feels like I'm at work and I'm doing a yearly goal. It doesn't
I'm with
feel
you.
fun. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't kind of get my attention.
I like your stretch goal though. That's a really good way
I
to
sort
look
of
at
do
it.
like this one I
This one
can
I'm working
I
towards.
can
Yeah.
work towards. And then let's see if I work towards that one. Let's see if I can do my stretch one. And it's amazing sometimes because just by the fact you've articulated that stretch goal, particularly for your finances, just how it's put it in there, but without that guilt of, oh, I didn't achieve it and there's something wrong.
Oh, There's so many good gems in there. Like, I just love that you touched on self-worth. I love that you touched on, focusing on what you do have, not on what you don't have, like focusing on genuine gratitude, that beautiful attitude of gratitude, that is the portal for more things to be grateful for, of course. Um, and yeah, that's just such a great answer. I just yeah, there's so many beautiful take homes in what you just said. I love that so much. So, what simple steps can someone take today to feel better about money? That's an interesting one, isn't it?
Mhm.
To feel better about money.
Feel better
Because you
about
touched on
money.
it earlier, didn't you, in regards to, is money evil, or is money this, or is money that, like all these negative mantras that have been passed down from generation to generation for whatever reason. So, yeah.
Look, once again, that's a big one, especially if you've got a lot of childhood trauma
That's right.
about money, or you've gone
Yeah.
through a significant issue such as divorce, or might have had something like overcoming a gambling addiction or other things, which
Yes.
some people have had.
Common.
There's like a
Yeah.
lot packed in there, but I think once again, it's like your actions do have a reaction here. So it's like it's one thing to think about it, but it's the other thing to do. And I think this is one of the issues that I have sometimes about some of the work on manifesting abundance. Like I've certainly
Yes.
manifested some amazing things,
Oh, you
but
certainly
like,
have. Yeah.
yeah, but if I said I'm going to manifest a gym bod without going into the gym, I'm just going to think about it. You'd think I was crazy because at some point I've got to do the work. I've got to have the discipline, right? So same with our finances. Yes, some amazing things can happen, like quite unexpectedly. And then you go, wow, how did that happen? But you've also got to be like on the path. You've got to start that process. I think you talked once about things being like a quest. So, you set the goal, you go on the quest, and then suddenly you just have these miraculous things. In Chinese, they often say like Wei like special people who will come and help you on your journey, but you have to
Oh,
be on the
yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
So if you really, really like absolutely money is freaking you out, I would say like just spend 10 minutes a day. So 10 minutes a day to do something about your finances. It may be that you just force yourself to look at your credit card statement for 10
Yeah.
minutes a day. That
Yeah.
might be enough because that might be freaking you out. And just then do something kind for yourself afterwards, and just then build it up over time. But just start with 10 minutes a day. Just look at something. It might be that you make a phone call to creditors, which is ever so scary, but that's 10 minutes. That's done.
Yeah.
10 minutes to, make a phone call to your energy provider and see if you can get a better deal or other things. And then over time, it'll get easier and it'll get better.
I love that. Yeah, manifestation is a little bit more than just wishing. I think it starts with the asking, the invitation, the wish, but you do have to action it. And I call it faith in action. So if you truly believed that it was coming in for you, you'd action it anyway. You'd go on the quest, you go on the journey, right? So I love that you explain that it's a little bit more than just going, I want to win the lotto. It's more practical. It's more pragmatic than that. I call it practical magic. You do have to actually take the steps and you know, and I like that you kind of made it, steps that are, 10 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing. I think it's about too like taking your head out of the sand and actually looking at your credit card, and things like that. I mean, and that was the goal of mine recently, was to yeah, just wipe the credit cards. And I did that recently. Yeah, because debt's not a fun thing either, is it? Even spiritually,
No,
debt is a not a good energy to be in.
no, and the whole debt thing is really interesting too, because traditionally there's been a lot of discourse around good debt. Like I've just bought a house. At the moment, I've got some debt while I'm selling off my previous apartment to buy this to help reduce the mortgage. Although weirdly enough, just to detour a little bit, when I rang my lender, Initially, I couldn't get an answer on how much I could borrow, and it turned out that it's because my borrowing capacity was so large and it was
Yes.
unexpected for him. He had to go and get second and third opinions. And I was like, well, I'm not surprised about this at all because I
Yes.
know based on how I manage finances that this is not going to be a problem, and it wasn't a problem. But anyway, going back to where we were talking about, help me lead me back on the path here. We're talking about managing debt. That's right.
Yes.
Um, there are, traditionally people said, well, good debt is okay. And certainly there are cases for when you're borrowing to do something positive, such as buying an investment property or, buying shares or buying something that's going to produce an asset. There's certainly reasons where that can be quite good and can actually be quite smart, actually, from tax or
Mm,
other points of view. It can mean you get in the market when the market's low and other things. But there is actually a growing group of people who are saying, well, actually, any debt is bad. You never need any debt. And so their investments of choice are things like exchange traded funds, which are kind of like a managed fund, but with lower fees, rather than, say, buying property or other things. So, it just depends on your um, personal investment strategy. In my most recent book, How to Pay Off Your Mortgage in 10 Years, I include a chapter about what to do if you or a friend is in chronic debt, because we are starting to see that a little bit. Some of the banks are saying the worst has now happened, but I think it's actually a little bit hidden. It's not talked about. I think there's a
mm,
lot more people that are really struggling. And you see that
mm.
particularly when events get cancelled, like music festivals and other things, or even like community events like school
Yes.
baits are not getting
Shops
the
closing,
numbers.
restaurants
Yeah,
closing.
all of that. It's sort of
Yeah.
hidden, it's not talked about. But there's sort of two strategies in terms of dealing with debt. So, one is the snowball approach and one is the avalanche approach. I don't know if you've heard about
No,
any
but
of
I'm
this.
fascinated.
And it's really it's a mind game often. So because people are kind of like ostrich head in the sand, I can't deal with this debt, I don't know what to do. The first one is a snowball approach. And so the idea is that, you've got a snowball, and, if the snowball kept going, it would get bigger.
Yeah.
So to stop that process, you pick the smallest debt, the smallest loan, and then you hit that as hard as you can and you get it to nothing. And then you've got the confidence, and then you move on to the others.
It does feel so good too.
Yeah, like you've cleared something, you've
Yeah,
achieved
you've
something, it's
cleared
something
it.
tangible, you've
Yeah.
cleared it. Um, The only problem with that is that sometimes some of these lower debts might not be the more dangerous ones. So the other
Yes.
philosophy is you look at it holistically, you get rid of those that have the highest interest rate first, like a credit card that might be over 20%, versus say a HEX debt, which might not be as big. So,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
have a more holistic approach and you attack the whole of it. Certainly the second one is, in terms of the maths, the better one, but the first one often works because of the psychological aspect. Because a lot of the thing with dealing with debt is you do have to get your mindset into a positive place. And people are often so mired in all of those negative emotions. Um, what they then often do is go and do things that give them the dopamine. And that can mean like shopping more,
Yes.
drinking
Online
more,
shopping,
smoking more.
all those unconscious habits. The online shopping is one that is a bit of a trap for me, I must admit. But I usually kind of like pull myself up and go, oh my goodness, when you start getting the parcels to the door, you know that there's an issue, right? Um,
When you can't get in the door.
yeah, that's true. Exactly. Oh dear. Yeah, yeah, that's so good. I love the way you explained that. Um,
Well, it's helpful to understand why people are doing it, like, especially if you're
yes,
helping someone who has a debt problem. Like, usually the first thing people say is, "I don't understand why they just don't give up the cigarettes, or why they're drinking so much, or
so
why they're going
true.
out so much." Well, they're doing that because they are in a mental state where they're under extreme
That's
stress,
right.
and they're doing, you know, the retail therapy we've been taught is the way you fix this, or the other sorts of things, the drowning your sorrows. All
Yes,
these kind of tricks that we've been taught will deal with the mental upset. But the problem is you just end up with a bigger credit card debt. You're not actually solving the problem. So it takes a lot of courage, actually, for
yes,
people who are in debt to say, actually, there's a problem. I
yes,
can do this. I can confront this. But, like any change, you'll have good days and you'll have bad days. It'll be a process.
yes. Yeah. Addiction is always, almost always masking a much deeper problem. And
Yeah.
addiction comes in so many different forms, you know, spending money, and it's not the obvious things like, or it could be, the numbing of, drinking or whatever it might be, or yeah, I think diving deeper and really looking at the root cause of why these things are happening. Um, and you're quite right. Like, isn't it interesting? You worry about your debt, but then you go out and create more debt. It's kind of like, yeah, it's not great, right?
Yeah, there's complex things that are at play here.
Complex. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, how do you balance saving with living a life to the fullest? Now, I know you do this so beautifully, and this has had a massive impact on my own life because, yeah, I mean, I've always kind of lent into that anyway. But in saying that, I think, you can live a joyful life and not, not falling into the trap of, retail therapy or whatever else it might be. Yeah.
Look, it is something that you do have to balance. And there have been some people, particularly on what they call the FIRE or financial independence retire early journey, who've actually suffered from things like depression because they've gone, I'm going to save 70 to 80% of my income so that I can save my money so I can retire early. And then that means that when they've got social things, they have to say no. And social things are often the hard one. Like that's probably one of our biggest spends. Like, taking other people out to dinner. I just found out about an interstate birthday that wasn't going to be on and now's on. So it's like, oh, short notice. I've got to have to book flights. I've just, bought a house. So money's a little tight at the moment until we do things. But, family's important. So you have to have those sorts of balances. I mean, I think it's kind of like investing in the relationships, really. Like if you sort of just save aggressively and then suddenly you retire, it's like, now I want to play. I want to go on holidays with all my friends. You might find you actually have no friends because you've been saving the whole time. So it's a it's a little bit of a balance. But if you go overboard and you spend all your money now, and some people have that philosophy, they're like, oh well, I might die tomorrow, so what's the point? But the point is that when you are just constantly in that sense of anxiety, when you're dreading the credit card bills, you're dreading the phone calls from debt collectors, you can't afford important things for your kids because you don't have the money, you'd like to live somewhere else, but you can't afford it. Like it's a terrible way to live. And particularly in terms of relationships, a large reason that relationships fail is because of the money. And it's often, I mean, Australia is one of the most affluent countries in the world per capita. I mean, there's a lot of people who are doing it tough, don't get me wrong, but like on
Yeah.
average, we do pretty well. Yet we are suffering from a huge issue with broken relationships because of money issues. So we need to have that equilibrium. So how we do it is we have an agreed amount that we spend for certain things. So every fortnight, my husband and I, we transfer $120 each. It used to be $100. It's gone up to 120. For many families, it's probably more, but we're frugal. And then that money goes on to what we call our gold cards. I'm currently using a card called Up UP, and it's actually orange. It used to be on a different provider, and I can spend that money however I want. So if I'm going out to lunch with the girlfriends, I'm going op shopping, I don't have to ask my husband's permission.
Yeah, great.
I'm not his, it's mine. I tend to hoard mine because that just makes me feel happier because I've still got a bit of scarcity mindset. He's very generous with his, but that's fine. And if he's sometimes I'll say, oh, are you spending money on that? He said, it's my money. I'm doing what I want. And it's great. It's fantastic. And then
That's
the
so
other
good.
thing we
That's so
have to,
clever. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think Anita Bell, who wrote the How to Pay Off Your Mortgage in 3 Years book, she called it a sanity allowance, but we tend to call it a gold card. But whatever you want to call it,
Do you sometimes
it's
combine it and do
yeah.
something together?
Um, Sometimes if we're going out to dinner and it's the two of us, we won't
Yes.
necessarily use that fund. But if I'm doing it for me, and I just feel, I don't know, I feel like doing something for me. I'm going to buy some more jewelry or whatever it is. I
Yes.
don't have to get his permission.
Yes.
It's mine. And
Yeah.
it's the thing about it too is it puts a limit on stuff because sometimes often we don't get a sense of how many coffees we drink or how many shoes we buy, like whatever it is. Like everyone's got something that they are really I don't know, collect, or that their
Yes.
guilty
We all
pleasure.
have passions and,
Yeah.
desires and likes and yeah.
Friday night drinks, cocktails, whatever. And it's not that they're wrong. It's just like often they're like, they become, you liked one, so you didn't just stop at one. You had
Yeah, why
two,
not
three,
have
four,
10
five,
or
10.
yes,
Yeah,
or,
exactly. And then
yeah.
that becomes a problem. So it sets a limit on that. And of course, you can vary the limit and you can do other things, but it just makes it clear, it gives you your autonomy, your independence, but also
Yes.
sets the limit. And then the other thing we do is we agree on a travel budget, because my husband loves cruises and he loves traveling. And that's perhaps more important to him than it is to me, because I'm kind of more frugal. But I've had to concede that this is really important, especially for the family. Um, like the next cruise we're going on, for instance, will be with like all the family, like my in-laws
Oh,
and others. So
yeah.
like it's not just my kids, it's like the broader family. But we set and we agree on that, and we agree on the budget. Um, he's perhaps less keen on the budget idea than I am, but it gives me that certainty. So it's around
Yes.
10% of what we earn is in that, which isn't huge in the scheme of things.
Oh, that's so good. I love that so much. You know what I love about that? They're practical ideas as to how, you can still have a fulfilling lifestyle, without, going crazy. I kind of really love that. What's one money habit that transformed your finances, do you think?
Really early on, it was actually writing down what I spent. So when I really had to become frugal early on, I used to have a little diary that I got from free, actually, from the bank. And I don't think they give these away anymore. And these days you can do a lot of things online as well. But just really being accountable, because then you suddenly kind of go, oh, that's amazing how that added up. Because, like, I think particularly now, things just sort of fritter. Like, it's like these money leaks. Um, I was contemplating on this as we moved house and as we packed everything in boxes and as we've now unpacked and as I'm trying to find places for things. It's like, where's all this stuff come from? And like,
Yeah.
I'm frugal, right? So, like, often there are things that people have given me, or other things, but we just have so many temptations about how we spend our money, and stuff is cheap now. Like, a lot of it is made overseas, a lot in China, but increasingly not just in China, clothing in Bangladesh, other places.
Yes.
Um, very, very cheap. Like the cost of housing and other things like education is very expensive. The cost of stuff, ridiculously
The
cheap.
throwaway stuff that's,
Yeah. So it's
yeah.
really easy to sort of go, oh, well, I can't afford the big stuff anyway, so I'll just, oh,
Oh,
it's
that's a
this
good
nice
point.
shiny stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but just being really aware of what that real cost of that is by
Yeah.
adding it
Add it
up.
up.
Yeah.
Add all those bits and pieces that perhaps you don't need up or you think you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a sense of guilt there, like not being
Yeah.
guilty
Not,
about
not,
it.
not,
Just like,
not beating yourself up, but
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So good. Now, we haven't touched on this, but I think it's kind of worth mentioning how important this is for women because women over I don't know what it is it over 50, is it over 60, that particular demographic, well, I know becoming homeless, don't have enough money to live on, and perhaps they've worked really hard and they've, but because of certain things, perhaps a separation, perhaps, who knows what, health issues or whatever it might be. Um, yeah, I just would like your take on all of that and how important it is, especially for women, to be, super smart with their money, right?
So important, more so than men for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
Statistically, we live longer. Statistically, we earn less. Unfortunately, I can't remember off the top of my head what the latest statistics are. They always come out in March every year, just ahead of International Women's Day, which is on the 8th of March. So they usually come out in late February, early March. But it's somewhere between 15 and 20% less on average that women earn compared to men. Now, this my husband always gets upset with this. He said, "Oh, like if they're in the public service, they all earn the same rate." And I'm like, "Yeah, how many women do you have in your team?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, not many." And it's
Yeah.
complex, right? But we tend,
It's very complex. It's a
yeah,
hard one to kind of unravel, but it's the important one to unravel because it needs to change, at the root, not at the tree. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. But like, here's the thing: women are statistically better investors than men.
Oh, I love that.
They are much better. So on average, it works out at 0.4%. Now, that might not seem like a lot of money, but like if you can consider, say, a home loan, you might get a home loan for 6%, but you might go to a lot of trouble to like negotiate from 6.4% to 6%. Like that 0.4%, if you've got, say, half a million, $1 million is a lot. So over the course of an investing lifetime of say 30 to 40 years, that 0.4% is really significant. So women are much better for a number of reasons. They tend to seek professional advice, they tend to do their research, they tend to not get too emotional about it. They tend to, if they've made the wrong call or made a mistake, they are much more, okay about recognizing that. And plus, they're pretty smart. So there's a couple of reasons why they're good at this.
I
The,
love
the
that. Oh,
yeah,
that's so good to have that positive spin. That's so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
The problem, though, is that women don't invest for a number of reasons. A lot of it is because traditionally there haven't been a lot of female role models, but this is changing. It's changing really quickly. Also, it's perceived that the finance world is jargonistic. It's often presented as like, this fast day trading, very male thing. But actually, a lot of saving investing is a long game about living frugally, living within your means, budgeting carefully, investing wisely for the long term. Those are the ways to build long term wealth that are proven.
Oh, I love that so much. I think also, it's quite complicated when relationships end. That I've been doing a lot of readings for many years, and I've noticed that quite often women do just walk away, for
Yes.
whatever reason, perhaps they're frightened of confrontation or whatever it might be. So I think it's so important to kind of even just, mention that, for your own self-worth, I think it's important sometimes to fight, not fight the good fight, but kind of, yeah.
Yeah, very tricky area. And there's a
Very
podcast I've
tricky.
got coming up that talks about some of this with a financial planner who works specifically with women. But yes,
Yes,
I also have a friend who I think she felt a lot of guilt because she'd left her relationship. So she left because she was burnt out, and she had every reason to like women have every right to leave a relationship if it's not working for them. But I think she felt a lot of guilt for that. So she just said, "I'm not taking anything other than one small thing." And now she looks back now that she's retired and goes, "Oh, like if I had
dearie
stopped
me.
and
Yeah,
asked, my life would be so much different now," because
yes,
often you're at, especially if it's later in life, you have a limited time in which to make that up. But it's really difficult when you're going through that. And usually, as you know, with
yes.
separations, it's the party who wants to get out the most who doesn't argue.
Yeah, that's so true. Not just women, men too, but yeah, it does seem to be a lot of women. What's next on your journey in financial empowerment? Because I love that you talk about not just about wealth, you talk about fulfillment. And to me, fulfillment is so much more enriching than, it's great to have a, fabulous, bank account and, assets and all of that. But fulfillment is just so much more rewarding. And I love that you touch on that. So what's next on your journey in financial empowerment? I just can't wait to see.
What's next for me? Probably more of the same. But I do want to get into more angel investing. I've started investing in some startups. It hasn't yet wielded huge rewards. They often don't for some time, but it is to me very impactful being able to help early stage startups who are doing good in the world. More so than say just investing, say, in a bank account where it's not going to see anything. So yeah, just finding positive ways to really make the money work is a big one, I think.
I love that so much. I know with your books that I've received over the years, I often pass them on. And I say to those people, after you've read this book, and please read this book, please pass it on and create that ripple effect of true abundance, true fulfillment, living a joyful life, all of that really beautiful stuff. So thank you so, so much for coming on to Ask the Oracle today. It's been
Thank you so
so
much for
fun.
having me.
Thank you so much, my love. Bye for now.
Thank you.